Welcome to the Have More Fun podcast.
Anyone who feels afraid and not that strong.
But for me, it hasn't been that. I'm not a chef. I don't have a degree in cooking for thousands of people, although that's what I've done.
There's a place for you at my table.
Y'all, I literally get snack packs of pudding and put it in a martini glass with a fun cookie. And people go nuts. They're like, will you make your butterscotch? I'm like, oh, I will scoop that out of a snack pack and make it for you. Yes.
If you have no place of your own, my door is open. It's always open.
The song you just heard is called At My Table, and it's by my friend JJ Heller. I first heard it when we were on tour together. One night before a show, JJ and I, along with JJ's husband Dave and our friend Kyle, were sitting backstage in the green room, eating pizza around a fold-up table. And on one side of the room, our suitcases were laid out along the wall, unzipped with changes of clothes laying on top, trying to get the wrinkles out from traveling. And then our backpacks and books and travel gear were strewn about the room. And I was so tired of being on airplanes and missed my family and the normalcy of home. In particular, I wanted to sit at my kitchen table and drink tea and listen to my kids talk about their day. In between garlic knots and margarita pizza that night, JJ pulled out her phone and played an unfinished recording she had been working on the week before. And the moment she played it, I realized how important sharing food around a table is and why I long to share a meal with my family, and why when I was a kid I loved when my parents had dinner parties and I would lay in bed long after I should have been asleep, listening to my parents and their friends laughing around our table. It was magical and comforting, and I never wanted it to end. Or my Nana's table growing up, there was always so many family members at our gatherings that people would sit at the table, but then those without a chair would stand around the outer circle around the table holding their plates, and we ate 2 layers deep because no one cared that they didn't have a seat. They just didn't want to miss out on the stories that were being shared and the laughter that ensued. I read an article by Victoria Pope in National Geographic recently where she writes, "Food is more than survival. With it, we make friends, court lovers, and count our blessings. To break bread together, a phrase as old as the Bible, captures the power of a meal to forge relationships, bury anger, and provoke laughter. And even when times are tough, the urge to celebrate endures." And then she goes on to share about how in the Arctic in 1902, during Robert Falcon Scott's treacherous discovery expedition, the men prepared a fancy meal for the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night of the year. Hefty provisions had been brought on board. 45 live sheep were slaughtered and hung from the rigging, frozen by the elements until it was time to feast. But with the meal, the cold, darkness, and isolation were forgotten for a while. In fact, Scott wrote in his journal, "With such a dinner, we agreed that life was worth living." And so our pizza dinner around a fold-up table in a green room, listening to a song served to be the warmth and light when I longed for the warmth and light of home. And that, to me, is the power of what can happen around a table. Which is why I love Sarah Harmeyer, the founder of Neighbor's Table. Neighbor's Table unfolded as all good stories do, unintentionally. In 2011, Sarah was a young professional, and as she describes herself, chasing all things shiny. She was driven, hustling, and looking in all the wrong places for validation and approval. After reflecting for a few months on how she could regain congruency with what she was prioritizing and what her soul craved, she took one simple step. Sarah asked her dad to build a cedar farmhouse-style table big enough to seat 20 people. She placed it under the oak tree in her backyard, dropped chandeliers from overhead, and started inviting neighbors, friends, family, and even people she met at the grocery store over for a meal. She set a goal that first year to serve 500 people around her table, which she did. In fact, as we sat down to talk, Sarah shared that now, only a few years since her first dinner party, nearly 3,000 people have sat at her table, which has sparked a mission to gather people around tables of their own. And so without further ado, let me introduce you to Sarah Harmeyer. Also, stay tuned at the end of our conversation to hear the full version of JJ's song called At My Table, and then go to YouTube and check out the adorable video they made for it. Hey friends, it's Mandy, and I'm here with Sarah Harmeyer of Neighbor's Table. Sarah, it is so exciting to get to sit across a little
Mandy,
table from you.
such a treat to be here. Thanks for having me.
Totally. We were just saying how fun it is to get to like be in each other's presence rather than having to talk over Skype or something like that.
In person is always better.
Way better, way better. So obviously, I so love the work you're doing with Neighbors Table, and it's inspiring to me on so many levels. And I was thinking of you recently. I was reading a book, and in it was talking about 18th century Dutch culture, which is really weird. But they were saying in this book that instead of calling people neighbors, that they called them table friends. And of course, it totally reminded me of you. And I feel like you're on a mission to create a whole country of table friends. And so, weird question, but when you're on an airplane and you're sitting next to someone and the inevitable question of, hey, what do you do, comes up, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, I love that question. I'm always so curious about other people. So when people become curious about us, it shows a lot about who they are. So I like to tell people, most people would assume I'm in the table business, but I like to say I'm in the people business. I think we love to feel connected. So right now we are building tables, handcrafted tables, in order to connect people. I think at the heart of all of us, that's what we want. And my dad builds these tables, and I literally travel across the country and I deliver them myself, like roll in with a big box truck, and we do a dinner party and we unload it.
Okay, are you driving
totally
the truck?
driving this truck, Mandy.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's really fun and crazy and adventurous. But so we've got something called Neighbors Table. I say it's a love mission. So we encourage people to love their neighbors, the people closest to them, whether that's to the left or right of them in their neighborhood or within their family or their friends.
Okay, so did you have the first table?
I had the very first table. That started in 2012.
2012.
Yep.
And did you go to your dad?
I asked my dad if he would build me a table big enough to seat 20 people. And I've got a tiny house in Dallas, kind of a tiny yard, but we had an oak tree and some grass underneath there, and we put this 20-foot cedar handcrafted table with benches and hung chandeliers overhead and just got real intentional about gathering people. I set a goal to serve 500 people that first year, which was just crazy being new to Dallas.
500 people.
One after another, I just started inviting people. And everyone knew the more the merrier, and they could bring a friend or a coworker or whatever, and it changed my life.
Is that table still in your backyard?
It's still there. Everyone signed the top of the table, and 8th graders have sat next to executives, and Pilates instructors have sat next to plumbers, and it is a cross-section of life, and it's been really beautiful. And I've been the one that's probably learned the most of anybody.
So how many tables have you delivered up until this point?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. I have not been counting. I've got a pen, like a corkboard pen map above my desk, and I've lost count. My goal is to have them in every state by 2020, and we're about 21 or 22 states right now. So
okay, are you in Colorado?
I am. We're in Fort Collins. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Sweet, cool people up there. So, yeah.
That is awesome.
It's been fun.
So there's a word that I just love, and I go back to it over and over again in my own life, and that word is linger. And I've been thinking lately about how we as a culture have lost the ability to linger. And it seems to me, and this is like my own experience and so true in my own life, but I am constantly in a hurry, like perpetually. My goal throughout the day is to check things off my to-do list. And when I'm really honest with myself and kind of analyze the most important moments of my life, I realize that none of it has anything to do with my to-do list. And it's all about those special moments where I just kind of forgot about the pace of life and lingered around a table with people I love or new friends. I saw recently, this was so fascinating, that 60 years ago, the average dinner time was 90 minutes. And today, it's less than 12 minutes.
Can you imagine sitting at a table for 90 minutes now?
No, not at all.
It's so rare.
I know, right? I mean, even when we go out to dinner, we don't linger.
Right.
Like, I remember lingering when I was a kid. And so there's this concept in Mexico that I actually just adore, and it's called sobremesa. And it's the stretch of time after a meal when the entire table stays seated and just talks. First of all, I love that they have a word for that, right? But it's a time where they joke and share stories, and all my friends who live there say that it's how their history is passed down around a table. And so, in my opinion, one of the greatest offerings that you're giving to the world is a table to linger around. What do you think of that word linger and how that kind of relates to the table experiences you hear about?
It's a different pace. Linger is slowing it down, hopefully putting our devices away, looking at each other in the eyes. I love that we sit on benches and our elbows touch and you have to use each other to crawl in and do it together. I think linger is a word that is not something that we are aiming towards in our work and our pace of anything in life. So to think about that and lingering around the table, like our friends south of us here, I love that idea.
Totally. It's really anti-producing, it's anti-hustle, it's anti all of those kind of things that we hold as important.
Yep.
And it's regaining our humanity in an important way.
We serve one course at a time at my table because I love the pace of that. We serve family style, so you have to awkwardly pass the platter while someone grabs the tongs. It does have to do with pace. If you serve a meal all at one time, you can linger, but there's something about waiting and anticipating something else coming out that I think is really beautiful. So it's a good thing for us to think about.
Totally. And I love how you really talk about proximity too. The bumping elbows, the sharing a bowl of mashed potatoes and like passing it around and spooning it onto someone else's plate. Like those kinds of things matter in like this most uniquely profound and like small details of life way.
Yeah, totally.
Love it.
It's good.
So I am fascinated when I travel because I get asked the same question over and over again, and I don't know if this is true for you when you travel, but anytime I'm out of the country and I'm invited into someone's home, one of the first questions they ask without fail, and it doesn't really matter what country I'm in, is, have you eaten yet? And there's just something about sharing food, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, what is that experience about a meal that transforms relationships and bonds you to someone else in a really weird way?
Yeah. I think the offering of it says, I'm here to love and serve you. The offering of saying, hey, are you hungry? Do you need something? Can I provide something that I have here? I think the table and food actually equalizes people, because we're all eating from the same surface. We've all pulled up a chair to the same place. I see that a lot around my table, and it's really beautiful when we get to do that.
Like how you talked about 8th graders bumping elbows with CEOs and sharing a meal. Like, it's a common shared experience that really help us to.
And I think as the host, so you're talking about having, that's what a host says to you as you walk into their home. We have the opportunity to set that tone in the way that we're caring for others and we're loving others and welcoming them into our space. So it's an intimate thing to be in someone's home. A lot of us are scared of that. But I have found when we kind of throw open those doors and we throw open those arms to welcome people, really, really, really beautiful things happen. And when we're open, God does a lot of really, really cool things.
Totally. Do you have a junk drawer in your house?
Totally, like 10. I have piles. I don't clean them up when people come over. Like, it is real life. I grew up in a home that our house had to be perfect before people came over. And I knew that's what I was modeled. We had a great time around the dinner table, but I didn't want my house I didn't want to function that way. I wanted to be really freed up and saying, this is real life. This is my room I'm not quite organized in, and letting it be open and available.
I love that so much because I have so many expectations on myself of like what people are going to judge me about, or they're going to see the dirt in the corners or the kids' fingerprints on the walls. And I had a friend not too long ago talk to me, and she's like, hey, where are your favorite houses to go to visit? And I was like, okay, I thought of like 3 friends whose houses I love, and I'm like, their couch has dog hair all over it. I know where their junk drawer is.
Right.
Their kitchen is like a freaking disaster.
Right.
And I'm like, that's why I like it.
Right.
It's not like the perfect, immaculately clean houses.
You don't see marble countertops in my kitchen. We're rocking the orange Formica. I am not even kidding. Like, it is real life. It's an old house. But that's where the party continues into my kitchen after a dinner party. Someone will grab a guitar, and the party continues as we're washing dishes and loading them in the dishwasher, and it's all part of being real and just being present. It doesn't matter.
So good.
Yeah.
Do you have any hospitality fails for the rest of us who are like biting our nails about having people over?
Yeah, I always joke that there's always McDonald's down the street for me if there's like a royal fail and we just need to go grab cheeseburgers or something.
Go get a Big Mac?
You know, because, Mandy, I think I've not made it about food, I don't feel like there has been a ton of failures. There's been rain, there's been weather challenges, things like that. There's been a couple crunchy conversations that we've had to navigate, but for the most part, it has really been a lot of joy, and there hasn't been a ton of hang-ups, and that's because that's the attitude I've tried to choose. So if you're listening and you feel like you are a constant failure, maybe your attention is on the wrong thing. I don't know.
Wow.
I try to focus about who is around the table than what's on the table. And when I make it about people, you really can't go wrong. Like we were just talking about, living open and living full on and just loving people, it's kind of foolproof. So that's
So
my
good.
approach to it.
Okay, so I am kind of obsessed with how to raise kids who flourish into adulthood, and so I've been doing a ton of research over the past 2 years.
Cool.
And over and over again, every single piece of research that I've come across says that there is one significant thing that helps kids flourish into adulthood. And I didn't want it to be true because it's so prosaic, and I'm really terrible at this. But the truth is, the number one thing that helps kids become adults who like are really adjusted and have a great sense of well-being is dinner around the table with their family 4 or more times a week.
Wow. Isn't
Isn't that kind of surprising, but also
that
like,
is
oh my
amazing.
gosh.
It makes sense.
Totally.
Wow.
And the facts are so astounding that if you didn't know better, you think like dinner time around a table like can solve world peace, because kids who eat dinner with their families, the statistics say that they are less likely to be overweight, perform better academically, are less likely to engage in risky behavior, have better relationships with their parents, know their family stories, have fewer behavioral problems, are more trusting, and are happier.
Wow.
Like
Those
a
are some good
lengthy
kids.
list,
Yeah.
right? Crazy. Okay, so my random question for you is, what was your dinner table like growing up?
Well, between all of our sports and all the things we were running to, the table was pretty important. My mom wasn't an extraordinary cook. She was creative, though, the way she approached that time. My mom was a teacher, so she was always looking for teachable moments. She would love to give us opportunities to be creative. She would blow a whistle sometimes. And we
Nice.
knew if it was close to dinner and we heard a whistle, we would go running in there and figure out what was about to go down.
Like a coach's whistle?
Totally. And she was
Amazing.
like, okay, girls, my sister and I, okay, girls, you've got 5 minutes to go dress like your favorite ball player and come back to the
Wow.
table. And we'd have hot dogs and popcorn that night or Cracker Jacks. She'd have a theme.
She was like the original Pinterest mom, I feel like.
She might have
Oh
been.
my goodness.
We'd be sitting at our plate and she'd be like, okay, there's a theme on our plate tonight. Can you figure it out?
Wow.
And we'd figure out that everything started with an S. There was steak and salad and strawberries. But she was just constantly kind of just dropping little nuggets into our little hearts as far as being creative and thinking outside that. It was also a time for our family to talk. My dad traveled a lot growing up, so a lot of times it was just the 3 of us girls. And she would ask questions about our days, and it would be our time to connect. So as I think about it, I never knew that it was really that integral, but I think it probably was an important time for us to connect. So, yeah, I've got good memories
She set
around
the
table.
stage for
Yeah,
your table
who knew?
movement that you're
Who knew?
creating. This is a question I ask everybody, and the answers are always so fascinating. But what is the best advice you never got?
My goodness. What does that even mean?
I have a different answer every week. I think of something.
So that means like something someone hasn't told me yet?
Yeah. So do you want me to tell you one of mine?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the best pieces I never got growing up, I feel like, was that the women in my life would be the people who are my biggest champions and who have given me every single break, whether it's my career or my personal life, or who have been
That's
my
good.
biggest cheerleaders. Because I think the narrative is always the opposite, right?
Yes.
Like we're competing with each other.
Yes.
And that has not been the case for me.
That's really good. You know, I wish I had known or someone had told me it's not all that important. We put so much emphasis on everything, and we stress out about it all. And it's not all that important. Everything is not important. I wish I had been able to funnel my attention and my heart to what really is important in life a lot earlier. This whole table thing I figured out the last 5-6 years, I wish I had known that life was really about shared experiences and people a lot sooner.
Okay, do you have 3 tips just for everyone listening for hosting someone? Like rapid fire style, just these are my best 3 tips.
Yep. I would say make it about people every time, and it will always be great. I would also say invite people into the experience. A lot of times as hosts, we think that we have to run around and scurry around and do everything. Ask someone to chop something for you, or hey, help me with the dessert. Will you help bring it out to the table? When we invite people, it gives them an ownership into the experience of what we're creating. And I would also say not only making it about people and not only inviting people into that experience, but then making much about them. Before we sit down at my table, I always go around and tell people what I love about them. It makes them sit down confident to the table, and it gives me, as their friend or their new neighbor that I just met 5 minutes before, to highlight something that I've already noticed about them. We hear enough about what's wrong with us, but I would love to see us share more words that build up, and take that opportunity to do that at the table.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you have to know, like, those words that you speak over them, like, hover in their hearts for years,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
those words are significant when
Totally.
someone tells us
Yeah.
what they love about us.
Are you surprised I didn't say anything about food or like
Totally.
something? It's not about that. And that's what I'm learning. It really is not about that.
It's how we
Some people are
welcome
really
people.
gifted though. So that's a way that they feel like they're loving someone is when they're making their great aunt's squash casserole. They're like, oh, I want to make you the very best. And I think that's great. But for me, it hasn't been that. I'm not a chef. I don't have a degree in cooking for thousands of people, although that's what I've done.
Do you have
because
like a
it's not about
go-to
that.
meal that you make, or is it just like whatever you feel like?
I
that
don't. We do a
particular-
lot of potlucks now. So my go-to is saying yes when someone says, can I bring something? I'm like, yeah, bring it. Bring black beans for 18. It'll make sense when you get here. We're having fajita night, like a true Texan, you know. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I do have a trick. A lot of people ask for my butterscotch pudding at the dinner table. And I'm like, okay, this is funny. Y'all, I literally get snack packs of pudding
Yes.
and put it in a martini glass with a fun cookie. And people go
So
nuts. They're like, will you make your
smart.
butterscotch? I'm like, oh, I will scoop that out of a snack pack and make it for you. Yes. So,
Okay, what kind of cookie do you pair it with?
what are those? What are they called? You know, they're in the little white bag with, oh, you've probably seen them on the
Is it
shelf.
like a sugar cookie? Or...
It's like a sugar cookie, like half chocolate, half. They're like nice cookies.
Okay.
You gotta like step it up a notch when you're
Totally.
serving snack pack butterscotch pudding. But yeah,
That's amazing.
People love it.
I'm going to go stock up on snack pack butterscotch pudding.
yeah, totally.
A
People
little
would
dollop
laugh.
of whipped cream.
Totally,
extra
I'm
fancy.
sure, right? Top it off. Oh goodness.
Oh, that is so good. I'm totally borrowing that. Okay. Tell us about where we can get a neighbor's table and about where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, if I'm not in my own backyard, you can find me online, neighborstable.com. There's a place on there about our tables, and we would love to chat with you about that. So it's not a click to purchase on my site because, again, it's all about people. We want to develop that relationship with people. I'm on social media, though, Instagram and Facebook at Neighbors Table. Twitter sometimes when I remember it. Poor Twitter. But, yeah, that's where we're at. And we kind of tell our story. I'd love for you to go to my website and check it out. But,
Definitely.
yeah.
So if someone wants to continue this conversation, or they're like, I just feel like God is kind of stirring it in my heart, this idea of inviting more people into my home,
Yeah.
or exploring what hospitality looks like for me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any books or resources that you would send someone toward to kind of start and continue the conversation?
Yeah. Actually, on my website, I've got a little shop, and I keep a couple books there. I don't know if you've heard of The Art of Neighboring.
Oh, my goodness.
Two guys right here in Denver wrote it.
Yes.
But, y'all, it is a great practical way of how to start getting to know the people right to the left and right of you. It's one of my favorite books on neighboring. My good buddy Shauna Niequist wrote Bread and Wine. That is, I think, a game changer. She wrote that a few years ago, but if you haven't picked that up, I love the way that Shauna approaches community and just loving people through food. I learn a lot from her. So both of those are there. I've got some table tokens too in that shop that I've actually brought some for you today. But they're these wooden tokens, you guys. There's a set of 10 of them. And I hear moms saying this all the time, how much they love them. But they each have a role to play at the table. So they say things like set table, fill drinks, say blessing, share the toast. It gives everyone something to do at the table. So how we were talking about participating and creating a space where everyone's in, those table tokens really help people, and I hear that a lot.
That is brilliant, and that's on your website.
It is, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I love that idea, even with kids.
Yeah,
where
totally.
Everybody gets a job.
Yep.
Everybody gets a role.
Something different every night. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sarah, you are a gift to everyone who meets you. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thanks for having me on here. It's been fun to chat. Thanks, Mandy.
Awesome. So we finished our podcast, and then Sarah started to tell me something, and I'm like, you have to hear this. So we're jumping back on. Sarah, is there anything unique that you do to kind of start your table experience?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it. I love to introduce people, so I circle everyone up. So that could be a group of 20 if my whole table is full. And I'll go around and tell everyone what their name is and then something I love about them. And it is shocking to people that I have just met as I walk down my driveway. But this smile creeps out of like their soul across their face when I start saying, he's a great dad. Like, he just told me about his 2 boys' soccer games this morning. And he's also an attorney, so if you need anything, he's down at this end of the table. Or some of my dearest friends, I get to say, this text really meant a lot to me this week. And I get to just say something great about them. The other thing I do is I always tell people what I hope that we would experience together. It's a funny way to say, this is kind of what I expect us to experience. So I'll say things like, I hope that we would do more listening than talking tonight. So many of us are so conscious of like how I'm different from someone and I'm ready to share my opinions. Well, when I just listen and I'm curious about someone, it kind of connects us a lot faster. I also think about, I say, let's serve each other tonight. I'm not going to run around and do everything. I want to invite you to be a part of this experience together. So if you want a second helping of something, grab it and offer it to the people around you. If you want something more to drink, offer it to someone else around you. If you want to clear plates, if you want to help me bring desserts out, if you want to load the dishwasher, I would love for you to do it. I don't remember the last time I loaded the dishwasher.
Seriously?
I'm serious. Everyone really takes it. They're like, okay, I'm a part of this. So I just kind of share things like that. And then I always pray. And there's not, every night, there's not a whole table of people with faith. And I just literally genuinely look around and say, would you mind if I prayed? And I look them in their face like, is that okay? This is kind of how we do this here. And then I say a fun prayer. And I also do place cards at the table because it's something, there's this awkwardness of where I'm going to sit when I'm at a big dinner party that I don't know a lot of people. And it tells that person, hey, I've prepared a place for you.
Wow.
I've thought about you. It's not like a junior high moment where I don't know where I'm going to sit. But I actually have thought who I think you'll really connect with tonight. And I've placed them across from you and that sort of thing.
It's all those intentional details that you do so well and are leading us all forward in. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
So brilliant. And I can't wait to have a dinner party now.
You got to come to Dallas.
I would love that.
So fun. I love
and
it.
I'd get to see the orange Formica counters.
We're rocking them. We are rocking them. Yep.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now go out and have more fun, and don't come back until you do.
This is There's a place for you at my table. If you're broken, you are welcome. If you're outside looking in, if you have no place of your own, my door is open. It's always open. Listen, every pilgrim, when the road ahead is long. It doesn't matter where you go, you're never too far gone. Even if you lost your way and been unfaithful, there's a place for you at my table. There's a place for you at my table.